from Lagos, Nigeria, and a very warm welcome to Business Day Agribusiness and Food Security Dialogue. My name is Owo Okiti, and I'm the Managing Director of Business Day. This morning, we are bringing to you again another dialogue on food security and, of course, on how we can improve that over time. In the past, discussions around food security have revolved around three main questions. And those questions is, how do we produce enough? And of course, the second one is, how do we minimize waste? And the third one, how do we ensure that Nigerians have access to the right food at the right price? However, you will agree with me that in the last few years, there's been another dimension added to this, and that is, how do we now protect those that actually produce the food? In conversation this morning, we have experts, and I mean experts in the industry, to look at different dimensions of agribusiness and, of course, food security. I mean, they have been brought together to provide the latest information and their expert opinion on this area. So we have speakers that will be speaking on security dimensions of food security, and of course, commodity storage, price stabilization, and of course, the third session, cushioning the financial impact of agribusiness post-COVID-19. Before I leave the stage to this expert to do what they are best at doing, I would like to thank our sponsors here this morning. Our sponsors are TGI Agribusiness and, of course, FS Commodity Exchange. I want to thank them for the support that they have given Business Day for us to be able to host this conference this morning. So I really, really look forward to the exchanges that we will have here this morning, some of which even started before we came live. I look forward to all the dimensions of the discussions, and I really do hope that you will enjoy it the same way I really hope to enjoy it, and that it will be a worthwhile vacation for you this morning here with us at Business Day Conference. I thank you for joining us, and I really hope that you have a great time with us this morning. Thank you all. I will now hand over to Ibi Dapo, who will be moderating the first session. And then, of course, we look forward to having you here the rest of this morning. Thank you all, and God bless you. Thank you. David.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, and I'm so happy to be part of this discussion today. And it's an honor to be moderating today's conversation, right? Thank you, Dr. Kitty. Nice to see you again. Today we'll be having a very interesting discussion because, as we know it, like Doctor has highlighted, security is really threatening, right? The food security of Nigeria, and it has become very pertinent to have this discussion. And this discussion, I believe, given the quality of personnel, so people that are on this panel, Business Day can do as they've always done, right? Write great articles out of this that would help shape policy directions to solving the issue of insecurity. As like we know, just to give a background, after the COVID-19 pandemic, food security has become like a major discussion across the country, right? And it's very, very important for us because we are living in a time when our production isn't sufficient enough to cover our consumption levels, and also the fact that we need to increase production levels, make good our value chains. Now security is now it's another part that has been brought to the table, and we need to deal with this, right? We need to protect our smallholder farmers. So on this panel, we have great men, I would call them, looking at their profile. I may not be able to read the entire profile because it's a very long one. Yeah, but before I go into that, I would love to announce to our attendees that during the course of the discussion, you can drop your questions by going on www.slido.com. So Slido is spelled SLIDO.com. SLIDO.com, right? And when you're dropping your questions, it's always good if you have the questions directed at a particular panelist. I would love you to mention the name of that panelist so that it could the question can be directed to him and he could provide answers to your questions, right? Okay. So on this panel, let me introduce myself. So I'm David Ibidapo, like I was introduced earlier. So I'm a senior analyst, research analyst with FX Commodities Exchange, right? And I'm honored to moderate this panel. So with me here, I have Mr. Salim Musa Umar, is the CEO, Farmers and Herders Initiative for Peace and Development. Mr. Salim Musa, popularly known as Salim, is a project manager, conflict and policy analyst. He is a national publicity secretary and a member of the National Executive Council of MACBAN, that's Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria. Salim has served as special assistant to the executive governor of Plateau State on special duties, advising on peace resolution of farmer-herder conflicts, right? And he has also served as chairman of the Fulani Peace Committee set up by the government of Plateau State in 2015 to establish peace between the Berom, which is farmers, and the Fulanis, who are the key protagonists in Plateau State, Nigeria. So it's very interesting that we are having Mr. Salim on this panel because he will be able to really do justice to the discussion around food security and the security issues affecting Nigeria. Thanks, Mr. Salim, for joining us on this panel. And also we have Mr. Suleiman Ledan. So Mr. Suleiman Ledan is a lecturer, Department of Basic and Applied Sciences in Azan Usman Kastina Polytechnic, Kastina, right? Mr. Suleiman has a master's degree and also a bachelor's degree in land resources. He's presently the chief lecturer at the Department of Basic and Applied Sciences, like I mentioned earlier, and he has conducted a lot of researches in areas of agri-geography, biogeography, environment management, gender and security studies, right? Then we have the last but not the least, Mr. Ramesh. Mr. Ramesh is the CEO of TGI Agribusiness. He's a senior global leader with 3 decades of financial and operating acumen, having successfully managed businesses through several business circles, right? He has deep experiences in startup, growing and leading agri and food sector businesses in developing and frontier markets, right? So as an African specialist, known in the industry for thought leadership in the sector, managing corporates and policy-making relationships at the highest levels. So on this note, I officially welcome my panelists to this discussion, and I will just dive in to the questions now. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think I would love to, so today we'll be talking about security dimensions of food insecurity, right? Like I said, it's very, very important we discuss this because we are at a point where we can't just overlook the security challenges that are facing our farmers, our smallholder farmers, that account for over 80% of the total production of crops in the country, right? So I will just jump straight to Mr. Ramesh. Mr. Ramesh. Hello, Mr. Ramesh, if you can please turn the video of your screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning.
Great.
I suspect you can see me, right?
Yes, I can see you now. Thank you very much. Okay, so I would just love if you can just give us like a brief introduction about the TGI Agribusiness. because we know that the TGI Agribusiness has invested across various verticals and across many regions in Nigeria, right? Considering the current challenges of insecurity, COVID-19, among others, how is your company responding to these times?
Thank you for the opportunity. The TGI Group has spent over 40 years in Nigeria, and the theme of our business is to be seen as and to be felt as a reliable and trusted food security partner to the governments where we operate. We recognize that the big priorities for governments across the continent are around food security, employment, upgradation of people, and import substitution. And as you can see, all these four priorities are interlinked, with food security being central. If you solve for food security, employment, import substitution, and upskilling all gets addressed. So our view is that local produce, processed locally for local. Sorry, somebody muted me, sorry.
Okay, please go ahead. We are listening to you.
Yeah, so our view is that local produce, processed locally for local taste, would resolve all matters of food security. But I guess we must all be aware that a large part of government policy is built around adequacy and availability as far as food security is concerned. Very little is done for affordability and accessibility. If we are able to produce food in a manner that becomes easy for the population at the lowest end of the social strata to access and buy, I think we would have really made serious headway. To do that, I believe that we have to do more from less, which means our farming communities should be suitably trained and suitably supported to be able to get higher yields. With higher yields, which means more wealth from the same land. That keeps farmers interested, and that keeps farmers from creating greater wealth for themselves from the land that they have. In the end, our small scale farmers are all operating out of 1 hectare, 2 hectares, 3 hectares, right? We need to help them create more value from there and therefore be able to produce more affordable food. What TGI does is, one, engage with the farmers and help them put in place good agricultural practices, get good inputs and good seed to them so that their yield improves. And we got enough demonstrable evidences of that having been done. Recently in Malumfashi, we put up a model farm for soya, which took the yield from 800 kilos per hectare to 2 tons. And we have many, many such examples of cotton and rice and so on. A real example I'd like to talk about, which is a live example of how food security can get impacted, is that in Kebbi State. And I must here thank the policymakers and the traditional rulers, all of whom have been extremely supportive. You know that Kebbi is the rice basket of the country. We have Nigeria's largest rice milling plant there, which does about 120,000 tons of paddy a year. We work closely with in excess of 5,000 farmers, and we have seen how yields have changed from 1.8 tons to almost 3 tons, 3.5 tons. Okay, what it therefore does is produce more paddy for us to mill. And in the bargain, because the rice mill is now thriving, we are able to also bring paddy from other parts of the country into Kebbi. We believe that this great partnership has resulted in significant stability in the social system, because economics helps social stability. And when social stability is achieved, I think we also see less crimes, less unemployment, and of course, food security in the bargain. Hence, I started by saying that all these things are interlinked, and we as corporates, we as policymakers must work together to try and ensure that we address all the problems as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you for that brief comment there. And I think on this note, you made a very important point there that we need to be able to scale up production so that can be accessed and bought by people, right? And we need policies that will support that will support this drive to give better yields, right? So I will just jump to Mr. Suleiman Landan, right? A lecturer, Department of Basics and Applied Sciences. Now, sir, you co-authored a book on the impact of military on food security, right? So I would love you to speak about that book and what you actually highlighted in that book. You may just want to share your perspective on on how you evaluate the impact of banditry on Nigeria's food security. You're muted, sir. Can you please unmute? Okay, great.
Yes. The issue of banditry in Katsina State in particular is very, very serious. Most of these bandits, they operate in rural settlements. And we know in the rural areas, majority of the people there are farmers. These rural areas are places that are close to the forest. So in my state in particular and other states in the Northwest geopolitical zone, these bandits will come from the forest and then they will attack the village community. Majority of them are farmers, cattle rearers, and in some cases, irrigation and fishermen. So from that research, I went around 5 out of the 8 most affected local governments. That was in December last year. And what we found out is that the bandits have killed some farmers. There was a particular incident in which it is a group of farm workers that were working at a farm in GBA local government, and the bandits came. They abducted around 20 of them. The others were just lucky to escape. So we have killing of farmers. Then we have kidnapping of farmers. A farmer can be kidnapped and they will ask some ridiculous sums of money that the farmer can or should pay or must pay in order to regain his freedom. So in that process, his family will sell all their life belongings, even the little animals they have. And by that, the farmer is impoverished. And in that case, he cannot do anything productive even after he's released. Besides that, also in some local government, like Paskari, which is close to Birnungwari in Kaduna State, we have instances of bandits chasing farmers out of their land. These are farmers who have gone to the farmlands for their farming. Most villages here, their farmlands are not, they're away from the villages, let's say 5 or even 10 kilometers. So we have incidences where the farmers were chased away. In some instances, the bandits were even asking that who tell you there will be famine in this season. So this is a very disturbing case. Then there are issues of seizing the farmlands. We have farmlands that are close to the forest where these bandits are hiding. Then the farmers, the bandits will come and seize these farmlands, will take them away. Or if they come and eat off the crops that have started germinating. And one very important serious issue is the issue of theft of cattle or cattle rustling. In these communities, in fact, it's very difficult for you to rear cattle. That's why here we are calling these bandits as people who make kiyo haram. You know, kiyo haram in Hausa language means cattle rearing is forbidden, because in any village, even a chicken, they would not live. The cows, the donkeys, the camels, they will just take them away. Anybody who refuses is attacked straight or he's kidnapped. So these cattle are very important. They are source of farm labor. They are also sources of manure. Then they are sources of income in case the farmer is in trouble. In certain instances, the bandits will come and they will burn grain silos. These grain silos are areas where the farmers have stored. They keep their produce maybe till the next harvesting season. The bandits will come to steal the food. Some of them that they could not steal, they will burn it. In some cases, they will even be collecting even manure or turkey. We call it turkey. There was a recent attack in Tsawa, in Batsalilo government. Even the manure was not spared. They collected the manure and they are using it for their farmlands. Then here in Katsina State, we have what we have called like local markets, where these farmers go to exchange their produce. These local markets are very, very important because it serves as a veritable tool of exchanging agri commodities to ensure distribution from areas that do not have. But this bandit will block roads. They will block roads, and then they will either kidnap the traders that are going to these markets, or in some cases, they will steal from what they have bought or from their money. So if you check that particular paper I authored, I have even incidences of these attacks or activities of bandits, that how it has affected how it has affected farming or food security in Katsina State in general. In fact, most of the farmers, they now come to the local government areas. That is where they stay. Some of them cannot even go to IDP camps. We don't have IDP camps at now because the government is discouraging IDP camp. So most of the farmers and others, they now stay with relatives. Most of these relatives now, they cannot even eat themselves. Now think of now somebody who cannot eat himself comfortably, and he's now supporting other people. So we were in a very serious problem here in Katsina State. We know the government has put some measures, but these measures are not working. I have some of my students who are indigenous of some of these local governments that are affected. They send messages. They send text messages and other means of information to me. Like in Paskari, I have a student at Rongo there. He told me that the bandits have made farming virtually impossible. There are places once a farmer go to his farm, he's doing it at the risk of his own life. So something has to be done seriously. Otherwise, we'll be in a very serious problem next year.
Yeah. I agree with you because we're actually in a critical period. Currently, wet season planting is ongoing, and if we keep having such attacks on farmers, it will continue to affect our production output, which is not even enough to meet with current consumption levels, right? I think at this point it will be very good to listen to Mr. Salim Musa Umar, the Nigerian CEO of Farmers and Elders Initiative for Peace and Development. I know at the core of his responsibility is actually looking for how to drive peace and development and ensure that the farmers and elders crisis is reduced, right? So in the past couple of years, we've seen an upsurge in farmer and elder clashes, just as Mr. Ladin has pointed out, right? So in your own view, what are the greater implications of this crisis on food security, right? Are we already seeing those implications now? And if not, if we don't solve these in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, what do you think are the greater implications to food security in Nigeria? Thank you very much. You're muted, sir. You're muted, sir.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you very much. I will not go back to highlighting the challenges because Mr. Ladin has already highlighted so many of them. And in the last couple of years, I don't think there is any living Nigerian that is oblivious of the challenges of farmers and herders. I think the major thing is that what we lack now is a unifying factor where all of us will see it as a very big challenge confronting Nigeria as a whole. As long as we see it as an isolated issue that has to do with farmers who are basically in the rural areas, and then the herders who are in the majority of them are the Fulani herders, I think we are missing the point. It's a very serious security challenge that is facing this nation. As long as we don't see it as a common problem, confront it, address it, and then resolve it, we are going to be in for we will be shocked at the end of the day, because as it is now, the challenges are enormous. And if we are unable to resolve this issue this year, or probably in the next few coming years, the challenge will continue to grow. Because if you look at it, in the last 5 years, it has not grown to this level. Initially, it was just between the crop farmers and the pastoralists, maybe farmers or pastoralists encroaching into farmlands, and that resulted into skirmishes. But if you look at it now, it has been seized, it has been commercialized, it has been politicized. It's now a very big issue. It's now an issue that has to do with life and death. Criminality has crept in, kidnappings has come into it, willful destruction of crops is there, willful killing of animals is there. So where are we heading to? So I think instead of lamenting, I think I will suggest that I profile some practical solutions, which if we are able to implement them holistically, we may be able to see the curve sliding down so that we can be able to resolve them. First, I'm going to suggest that we have to improve security, because as it is now in the Northwest and in the North Central, and probably in some areas in the Northeast, because the scenarios are a bit different in the Northeast, it is pure criminality, because armed banditry and kidnappings has really taken over the issue of even the farmer and herder crisis. So we need improved security, more boots on the ground. The bandits needs to be, like the Mr. President said, they need to understand that they need to be treated in the language they understand. It's unfortunate that the farmer and herder crisis has been allowed to grow into where we are now. So I will suggest that improve security. Secondly, as long as communities did not take ownership of their own peace, there's going to be a problem. Any peace that is enforced from outside is not likely going to hold for a very long time. So communities must surely address this issue. And this is where leadership and sincerity of purpose comes into play. So communities must take ownership of their own peace. Thirdly, impunity must end. I want everybody to understand the dynamics of the farmer and herder crisis, and even the issue of armed banditry and kidnappings. The issue now is that, for instance, let me just give a small example. In the organization where I was the national publicity secretary, that is the Mieti Allah. Some people have this notion and assumption that Mieti Allah is a criminal organization that is conniving with the bandits and criminals to further perpetrate crime. It's not like that. As long as we are unable to live above our individual biases, as long as we allow emotions to rule over our sense of judgment, definitely we'll never get the solution to any problem, not even the farmer herder crisis. Any solution that you allow your individual biases to take over your sense of reasoning, we are doomed. So we must allow justice to prevail. Even the Fulanis, some of them, you cannot just wake up in a day and generalize and say all Fulanis are criminals. It's not true. You look at the positive sides. They have been contributing to the nation's protein requirement for so many years, and majority of them now are still doing that. But they are also victims of the criminals. Their cattle have been rustled, their sources of livelihoods have been completely taken over. And don't forget, there is no any deliberate investment to educate them. All they know is their cows and the bush. Where do you want them to fit in Nigeria of today? So government must definitely even invest for the sake of public good. Then recently, government has come up with a program, which I was a member, the National Livestock Transformation Program. That must be implemented to the fullest. Some state governments have reservations. Those issues, if their reservations are genuine, they must bring them to the table and address them. It's not the issue of you saying you don't want a Fulani man in your state, and then in the evening, you will go to your dining table and enjoy beef. You don't even know where that beef comes from, and you are here spewing venom out of hatred because you allow your individual bias to take over your sense of reasoning. Bring your issues. This country belongs to everybody. Anybody that comes with any sense of entitlement is deceiving himself. So we have to come up, sit on the table, address the issues, and then resolve them so that our shared humanity will live in peace there. Another suggestion is that states implementing anti-grazing laws, that those laws must be reformed to fit into the reality. Some of the states are just using that anti-grazing law to harass, intimidate, and then confiscate livestock from innocent herders. We have documented evidence. I am not saying this because I'm a Fulani man. I have long realized that if you live above your biases, telling the truth will not be a problem for you. So those that are free to investigate and see what I'm saying, whether it is true or not. Then we have to encourage dialogue between farmers and herders. That is very important. And then if you go to the Northeast, we have to combat desertification. It's very important. As long as the certification is allowed to be eating and encroaching into the farmlands without any control, we are in trouble. We are just deceiving ourselves. In the long run, we will still come back to this problem where we are now. So some of the practical steps I'm suggesting is that we have to be serious. We have to look at this problem as a problem that affects everybody in this country. It's not an isolated issue that has to do with Fulanis and farmers alone. It's not like that. Yeah. So this is my suggestions for now.
And thank you, Mr. Suleiman. And I'm happy you brought up the discussion around what the government must do, right? At least, I think I should ask Mr. Ibrahim Kabi. I don't think I stated his profile then. He's the president of All Farmers Association of Nigeria, that's AFAN, right? So Mr. Ibrahim Kabi, so my question to you is, so we've had policy drives like the Operation Feed the Nation, the Green Revolution, the Agriculture Transformation Agenda, the Agriculture Promotion Policy, and many others like that, right? So my question to you is, we've seen that these initiatives have not really led to improving food security in Nigeria. So what would you say, or what would you identify as the challenges that make these programs to fail or to be less impactful? And also, I would love to also add that in your role as the president of the AFAN, right? What are those things that you have identified that are limiting the capacity of Nigerian farmers? And what do you think they should be exploring in terms of the policymakers should be exploring to make the sector more productive? What do you say?
Thank you very much, and good morning to you all. There are a myriad of factors that are debilitating against food security in Nigeria. All the policies you mentioned have been created to make food sufficiency possible for Nigeria. Some of them have not really failed as policies, but they failed as they are being implemented, or they were being implemented. The policy that just lapsed, the agriculture promotion policy, took the best part of ATA, the agricultural transformation policy, and came about. And we were lucky that the CBN keyed into it, and it created so many windows to make farmers more productive. But now, from the end of APP in 2019, we don't have a new policy that will further deepen the amalgamation of APP and ATA. This is one, and it's the bane of what is happening today. But the threat factor that is very, very important to the attainment of food security in Nigeria is insecurity that prevents the farmers from accessing their farms. It's very, very important for us to address that issue. Now, coming out of that, there are many, many other factors that would help to bring about food sufficiency and food security. They are, first, we must be able to use the findings of research. We must be able to mechanize. We must be able to reduce post-harvest loss. We must be able to process what we produce. We must find the right market for what the farmers produce. Above all, we must draw a clear distinction between finance and the economy. The thing that is creating the skyrocketing prices of food, even where it's available, is the purchasing power of the Naira. Once the Naira is gravitating around 500, 480, 500, and even beyond, to be able to purchase $1. Well, of course, all the inputs that we bring into the country or we produce using our own sources of energy will cost money. And the farmers, once they buy these inputs at high prices, definitely their produce will also attract a lot of money. And once we cannot process and we produce something and sell it to people in its primary form, first, the people who buy are middlemen. Then the middlemen will sell to the processors at high prices, and the processors are providing their own enabling environment to be able to process. And therefore, you have a corresponding increase in the prices of all these things. Now, this may be a governance problem, but as my friend from Yeti Allah said, every problem of development or security or what is everybody's problem. Nigerians should understand that the government is actually the people. We are the people who said this, a group of people should be able to govern us. And they govern us the way that we want, but we must help them. Help them by criticizing them constructively and supporting them to achieve the desired results. These are all the things that we must look at. So the whole thing is a gamut of many factors that will bring about self-sufficiency and the ultimate desired self-security in Nigeria. Food security in Nigeria. The journalists must be able to tell everybody else the truth, no matter whose ox is gored. The farmers must work assiduously to make sure that food is available. They should not selfishly sell food at exorbitant prices. The people who process must process and add reasonable profits, covering all their production and their processing costs. We do not have to have a price control because we are running a mixed economy. All other countries in the world that have food security do not necessarily have price control, but they have price regulation by the actors. If you go to the United States of America, for instance, if you buy something $1 in Delaware, you come to Washington and buy the same. If you buy in Nigeria, the only commodity that costs the same is probably Coca-Cola. You buy Coca-Cola in Lagos, you come to Faskarima village and you buy it at the same price. So we must be able to help to augment our transport and distribution system so that the inputs that the farmers use are sold like Coca-Cola. If fertilizer is 10,000 in Lagos, it should be 10,000 in Faskarima village. And then the issue of security, as I said, is the greatest threat factor to food availability in Nigeria. I don't want to dwell on what other speakers have already talked about because otherwise it will be repetition. I am from Faskari, the epicenter of banditry and kidnapping in Katsina State. We are at the southernmost part of Katsina State, very close to Zamfara State. We are bordered by all the dangerous forests that we are talking about. 3 kilometers to the west of my village, you cannot go to the farm. I myself, I have a farm of 1,000 hectares that I have not visited in the last 3 years. Because even the people who used to rent it, the people who still live in the periphery, cannot farm because if they go to the farm, they stand the risk of being kidnapped or even killed. So that is very, very important. We must be able to do that. We have proffered a number of solutions in various fora. I have been in every committee on security or stemming insecurity. And I have spoken at length, even in Addis Ababa, on pastoralism across Africa. And here in Nigeria, I had written a paper and presented it at the NIA Conference Center to the National Assembly. The one thing that has not been done up to now is this, and I'm going to say it again. And I'm a spokesman for the SDGs in the UN. I have attended conferences on climate change. I am an architect, and I feel that we must do that which we have always said is not possible. That is to say that we must degrade the forests. We must be able to bring life, useful life, into the forests by defoliating those trees with a lot of leaves that the bandits used to hide and to use as safe haven. We must sectorially bulldoze some of the forests to give accessibility to the forests, so that when we chase the bandits, they come into open land where they will be arrested or decimated. We must do that. This has happened in Brazil. If you heard of the Cerrado used to be a thick forest, and they have been able to bulldoze the forests, and they are utilizing it now in food production. And I can tell you that Brazil has food security. To tell you the truth, when I was the president of Poultry Association of Nigeria, it is cheaper to buy yellow corn from Brazil into Nigeria. The voyage time from Rio to Lagos is about 2 weeks. And the landing cost of yellow corn, 1 ton of yellow corn, is less than $300. And all the things you see in Nigeria that they used to even bring before this ban of, or before our efforts at controlling the inflow of rice and things like that, they would find their way from Brazil. So Nigeria can be food sufficient, and we can attain food security with the manpower we have. And if we do some mechanization and make sure that we process what we produce, there is an opportunity now through the AFTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Nigeria has been referred to in many fora as a giant of Africa. We can be a giant for real by optimizing our possibilities in agriculture. I lead the work stream in agriculture in AFTA. And I'm a member of the National Action Committee of AFTA. We have given advice on what to do. So the whole thing is, it calls for a lot of action. We must walk our talk. We must be able to manage the food system very well. We must be able to tell each other the truth. We must make all problems our own problem, everybody's problem. We must act in unison to bring succor to our nation. I would answer questions as they arise. I hope I have digressed a little. I have said the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. In fact, you really expatiated on more than what I asked, and that was very insightful. At this point, I would like to remind our attendees that they should send their questions to slido.com, and to log in, to put in your questions, you have to input the code #agric. So your agric is in capital letters, right? All in capital letters. So #agric21. #agric21. So start dropping in your questions, and we will take your questions, and we would talk to those questions, right? So I would also monitor from here those questions. So let me repeat myself: slido.com, right? www.slido.com. Use the code #agric21, agric in capital letters, #agric21. Thank you very much. It's very wonderful to hear our last panelist talk on at least identifying the bottlenecks across the agric value chain, and ensuring that we solve the food insecurity issue, right, amongst other factors. I think at this point I would love to come back to Mr. Ramesh, and your subsidiary Wakot recently partnered Can you hear me, Mr. Ramesh?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. Yeah, great. So your subsidiary Workout recently partnered with Syngenta, a leading global agri-tech company, to boost Nigeria's food security, right? And I understand that through this partnership, Workout and Syngenta would collaborate with farmers and others to sustainably improve the agri sector, and the most important factor in the agri sector, which is yield, right? So would you love to bring us up to speed how the implementation of this is going and what your vision for the project is?
Thank you. Couple of things. I heard some of the previous speakers speaking from their experience, and I will speak from mine. I was in Argungu less than 3 weeks back. We are also in partnership with the USAID to try and improve the lot of the rice farmers in Kebbi and other parts of northern Nigeria. What we do with Syngenta, what we do with USAID, and what we do with a variety of other partners who bring great technical expertise is to provide them a platform, because we are present in every state across the country. We deliver agrochemicals to farmers, we deliver seed to farmers, we deliver fertilizer to farmers, and we buy back their crops. That is primarily our model. And when we buy back their crop, we process it as much of it as possible locally to distribute to the local markets. That, in our view, is fully servicing the food security model. The fact is that one company like ours can't do it all to satisfy such a large country's needs. We need 50 companies like ours doing it. While all of us are addressing as to what is the problem, and I know that all of us know what the problem is, really, if we focus on how can we solve the problem, I guess we'll move ahead. What we do as a company is try and address that how. What steps do we take on the ground in action to make things change? So we are viewing this as a half full glass and not a half empty glass. Every country can improve. Every situation can be better. I can be better. Even Switzerland can be better. But we believe there is a large headroom for growth that's available to us here. And therefore, we are here in the economy and participating. So before the seasons begin, we obviously have a chat on a monthly basis with all our teams, which are placed in various parts of the country. And I must say that we have seen direct correlation of economic stability going hand in hand with security and the capacity to build food security. Families that are economically stable clearly are in a happy situation as far as food security is concerned. What our partnership with Syngentas of the world do is to provide the farmer with the armory in the form of agri inputs to be able to produce more from the same land. If we can get the farmer to be richer, he can afford to provide that food to the consumer at a more affordable price. We are therefore directly attacking the challenge of affordability for food in the country. That is our view.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's insightful. So at this note,
You're muted.
Yes, so thank you. So I would love to check if we have questions from our attendees. Okay, none yet. So no one has dropped any question yet. So I think I should just go back to, I would love to go back to Mr. Salim Musa, CEO of Farmers and Elders Initiative for Peace. You made a very important point as to the solutions, right? And that's communities must take ownership of their own peace. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's a very good point. But we've seen situations where communities tend to take matters into their own hands, and it increases the old insecurity issues, and before you know, fights and destructions and other things issues, right? So I think I would love if you could give more clarity as to ways in which they could actually take ownership of their peace without having to resort into violence. Because yes, they're killing me, they're killing my people. I could also carry machetes and guns.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
yes, I can hear you,
well.
sir. Please go ahead.
What we mean by communities owning their own peace is, you know, we have so many situations where even communities themselves, are in dispute among themselves, if they are able to take ownership of their own peace, it means all stakeholders in their area, including those that are not even willing to give them a handshake, they must bring them together under one umbrella. That umbrella must be the security architecture of that area. If the security agencies are involved, community leaders are involved, youth leaders are involved, vigilante organizations that are really the problem in some areas, if they are brought under one umbrella to work together with community leaders who are sincere, they approach the issues with all sincerity of purpose under the guidance and tutelage of the security agencies. Believe me, almost 70% of the issues we have at stake at the community level will be resolved. Why you are thinking in this direction is that our experiences are not good, because like you rightly said, some communities that decide to take the ownership of their peace into problems. That is not what we mean. What we mean is that everybody that is a stakeholder, everybody in the security sector, the youth leaders, vigilante organizations, the herders association, the farmers association, let them come together with a sincerity of purpose, address the issues as they are, because the issues are not the same. There are peculiarities. In the Northwest, they are different. In North Central, they are different. In Northeast, they are different. So all these issues, bring them together, address them holistically together, not in isolated issues. For instance, you can see one community addressing the issues within themselves without involving the other relevant stakeholders. So that brings that is an issue, because you cannot be able to solve this issue in isolation. So owning your own peace is by inviting everybody to come on board and then look at the issues holistically and resolve them. That is what we mean by communal ownership of peace.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for that clarification. I'm grateful. Yeah, we have just 5 minutes more, and at this stage, since we don't have questions from our attendees, I would love each of our panel to actually give us the final words in just a minute each. And I would also love Mr. Ibrahim to maybe probably his own final words should revolve around, like you mentioned earlier, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, right? It's important because this can also help drive food security if we can embrace regional trade, right? So I would love your last words around that. So I think I should start with Mr. Ibrahim, then Mr. Suleiman, then Mr. Okay.
Thank you very much. I would like to call upon every farmer to work assiduously to produce what they do best. And I would like every region of this country to address its staples. Let us start from there. Once we are food sufficient in Nigeria, then we go to other places. And then there is no better place than our African brothers and sisters. Let us be able to produce optimally so that we can play a very important role on the after. So that the informal trade that has been happening between Nigeria and Niger, for instance, will be formalized. If you go to Dawano market today in Kano, you find that there is a lot of food items there. And the people who come to buy 1 bag, 2 bags, whatever, are really coming from Niger. When the border was closed, you would be amazed at the kind of activity that was going on in terms of the food requirements of the people in the neighboring countries. Now, if we are able to produce enough, more than what we can consume here, and for people to really find market abroad, our people will be prosperous. A farmer will not be looked upon as a poor man. He would come to his farm on a helicopter. This is what happens in other places. Even in Ghana, northern Ghana, the corridor between, in fact, Kano and some parts of northern Ghana is still open. I heard somebody talking about dealing with USAID and all that. We have done a lot of work on that route. The corridor is open. Nigeria used to, or is still giving them food. So the potential in Nigeria is very high. The farmer in Nigeria can produce optimally. But first and foremost, we must ensure security that will give the farmer access to the farm. The Miyetti Allah or the herders and the farmers, we belong to the same group. There was a time that we did a press conference together with Miyetti Allah. In my office, they came, their president, the secretary and all that, and even the PRO would recall that our relationship had always been solid. We are hiding behind the farmer-herder clash in Nigeria to blame people for the insecurity. The insecurity in Nigeria is coming from criminality. Most of the people perpetrating the criminality are neither herders nor farmers. They are Nigerians. It's a Nigerian problem. And we need to address it holistically. Yeah. And every home should do its utmost to make sure that its offsprings are behaving to build the country, not to destroy the country.
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ibrahim. Yes. Before we go to Mr. Suleiman, a question just came in now. Apologies, Mr. Suleiman. So this question was directed to Mr. Ramesh, right? So the question is: we know TGI is big on backward integration and connects with a lot of farmers. So this person is a farmer and he said, what project of yours can he key into as a farmer? He wants to know what project of yours can he key into as a farmer. So 1 minute.
Right. So we have multiple projects happening in different parts of the country at the same time. So Funtwa is one center, Kebi is another center, Gumel is another center, Gombe is another center. Depending on where he is located and what crop he does, there are multiple possibilities that we can do. The same farmers sometimes do 2 or 3 projects with us depending on the crop timing. So if he contacts us, we can put him in touch with the right people who can appropriately address his requirement, depending on the crop and the location where he is. Because we are present across the country, I'm sure we can address this problem.
Okay, great. That's great. I think I would, for Mr. Suleiman, I think I would direct this question to you. So how can farmers improve productivity per square meter on farmlands, and how can they tackle the bottlenecks of logistics with moving farm produce? So we use that as your last words. You're muted, sir. You're muted, sir. Mr. Suleiman, you're muted.
Okay, the farmers need support. Most of the farmers here in my state, they are peasant farmers. So whatever they have to do, they need support from the government. Right now, what they need is peace. Right now, what they need is security. I know now that there is an ongoing military operation in Kaduna State, but it will not help. What we need
I guess
simultaneous military. It will solve the problem. I will not support the defoliation of the forest. I think what we need simultaneous military operation, then manage our forest, then we should be able to monitor our land borders so that these bandits will not go out if they are chased out, and they will not come in maybe when the military operation subside.
Oh, okay, I think...
and then the local people need to be supported in their agricultural production.
Hello, Mr. Suleiman. I think your network is a little bad. So at this junction, I think we've come to the end of today's dialogue on security and how to boost just food security issue. Thank you. I would say a big thank you to all our panelists, Mr. Musa Salim, Mr. Kabir Ibrahim, Mr. Ramesh of TGI, and Mr. very much for lending your professional thoughts on this very critical issue. And at this junction, I believe Business Day will do a great job in relating your ideas to the public, and hopefully we would have good policies that will help solve the insecurity issues in our country, and we'll all be better for it. Thank you very much, and I'll be handing over to Rafiat Gawat, the head of corporate communications TGI Group, who will be moderating the next panel. Thank you. Over to you, Rafiat.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody, and it's definitely good to be here. My name is Rafiat Gawat. I manage corporate communication for TGI Group, and the panel I'll be moderating. I actually like the topic a lot. Is commodity storage, price stabilization, and food security, the role of commodity exchanges. And the panelists here are actually pretty loaded. I'm sure that we have almost a century's worth of experience between all of them. So without wasting much time, I'll just briefly introduce the panelists and just ask that they please turn on their video. There's Mr. Akinshola Akeredoluale. He's Managing Director and CEO of Lagos Commodities and Future Exchanges. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I'm here. I can see you, Rafiat. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. And then Mr. Akinshola has over 29 years experience in the capital market operations, in asset management, private banking, stockbroking, marketing, financial restructuring, and re-engineering, project finance, and capital formation. So if anybody can talk about commodities exchange, he's definitely an authority. Then I would also introduce Mr. Ayodeji Balogun, CEO of FX Commodities. Are you there? Okay. And then Dr. Gbadebo Odularu from the Center for Study of the Economies of Africa. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I'm right here. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Please turn on your video, sir.
Okay.
Okay. And then there's Mr. Okay, before I call the last person, Dr. Odularu is the CSEA, that's Center for the Study of African Economies, University of Oxford, UK. He's their non-resident senior research fellow. He's also currently affiliated with Bay Atlantic University and Socioeconomic Research and Applications Project, SERAP, Washington, DC. And he's done quite a lot in terms of the economy and all of that. He obtained his PhD from the University of Sunderland, UK, and his current research interests revolve around food systems, trade facilitation, digitization, inclusive financing, value chain analysis, business accelerator, dietary well-being, aging population studies, and all of that. So again, this is somebody that is definitely well-grounded for the topic that we want to discuss. And then there's Mr. Bello Lafe. Are you there, sir? Oh, I think you're muted. So,
yeah, good morning. I'm here.
Good morning. Okay, great. So Mr. Bello, Mr. Bello is currently the country coordinator at Collateral Management International. In Nigeria, he manages the day-to-day activity in providing expert collateral management, stock monitoring, and inspection services to commodity traders, food processors, and financial institutions. And before that, he's worked with, he was the agro manager for FMN, and he managed all processes in the value chain from farm to the actual aggregation of grains for processing. So again, somebody that is well-grounded in commodities and commodity trading and exchange. So I'll go straight to my first question, because it'll be good to actually have an understanding of what a commodity exchange should be, because we're talking about storage, price stabilization, food security, and the role of commodity exchanges. So I would go from one person to the other. Just in 1 minute, can you just give us a brief what commodity exchanges do or what their role is? And then each person can build on the next person, on the previous person's response. And then so that by the time we're the last person, we have a full understanding of what commodity exchanges do. So I'll start with Mr. Keridolu Ale, please.
You're welcome, Rafi, and I'm very, very happy to be here. They have given me just 1 minute, so I'll try and rush into the 1 minute. First of all, I want to support what the last speaker said at the last session, that defoliation of forests is not be the way at all. Because if you are complaining about desertification in a particular area, you now go for that defoliation, it will create a bigger desertification subsequently. Now, let me come straight to the commodities exchanges. Commodities exchange is a medium whereby you use electronic methods, to run digital economy, to get what we call a price discovery and to create an organized approach to trading embedded with the financial risk management protocol, and to be able to use and integrate that into productivity across the full supply chain, also by leveraging on the commodities ecosystem, so that we can catalyze what we call the last mile connectivity between the farmers and the global and regional and local off-takers that want to participate in that particular ecosystem. Also, the commodities exchanges also start to assist the value chain in meeting the demands of agro-allied industries, and to create a sustainable local supply for commodities in a particular region, in a particular environment, and also to safeguard the supply chain and then create good conditions by way of standardization and certification to be able to produce globally acceptable instruments. And that last mile part of it is what the commodities exchanges do. Create capacity to be able to raise capital, support the commodities ecosystem, and also, for what has been mentioned earlier, to be able to create what we call a two-way price discovery. And price discovery is to be able to create a balanced price so that people don't get cheated when they produce in the ecosystem. In a nutshell, that is what the commodities ecosystem does. The commodities ecosystem has a very large space whereby you have so many stakeholders that I'll be discussing subsequently, if you allow me to do that. I think I've been able to work inside 1 minute, Rafia. Thank you.
Just over, but it's fine. Dr. Odularo, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Rafiat. In addition to to Akin's presentation, I think he has covered everything, and is a really well inclusive and encompassing presentation or discussion about commodity markets. And what makes commodity markets more unique, in addition to what Akin said, is a lot of variability, a lot of vicissitude, a lot of unpredictabilities that are in our times. We just went through COVID, and we know there was nobody really expected it, and one of the policy interventions or programmatic interventions to respond and to bring our businesses back, whether agribusinesses or any other businesses, is to have a commodity platform, such as a commodity exchange or agricultural commodity exchange, that will help us manage the cyclical variabilities in the demand and supply of food. So that's what I would like to say in terms of the dynamic and unpredictability nature of agri-food landscape, and how commodity markets serves as the appropriate intervention to help understand, to help manage, and to help enhance predictability, as well as enhance livelihoods for farmers, especially the smallholder farmers. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Mr. Bello. I think you're muted, sir. It's a bit faint. No, I can't get any audio from you. No, I still can't hear you. No. So we'll come back to you, Mr. Bello, but so I'll go to Mr. Akeredoluwale. So I know that, you know, there's a lot of, we're talking about storage, price stabilization, and food security. But for those to happen, I know that you briefly touched on it, but what are we talking? Well, how do we go about availability in the first place? So for the commodities themselves, how are we even saying that? Because for exchanges to be impactful, there must be adequate availability of commodities. So how exactly do we marry this vis-a-vis talking about storage and price stabilization and food security?
Thank you very much. I did not want to jump the gun earlier when you were spoken about that. In the ecosystem, it's a total cocktail. And what you do in that particular ecosystem is that from the primary input, which has been spoken about earlier, you can easily determine outcome. And that's why there were discussions around seeds, which are produced, and the technology into seeds and things that you're going to plant. If you plant a particular seed, that's going to give you maybe like a bunch of like 10 tubers. And then you have another seed that is going to give you a bunch of like 3 tubers. It means that there's technology that's going into the primary input. Now, in some cases in the global space, there's something called aflatoxin compliance. Aflatoxin compliance in some cases can be determined from a primary output. That is what you are planting in will determine that. To the extent that the production of whatever you're going to do will be large. So if you're going to go into anything that's about production, the primary input that the seed starts and crystallizes the beginning of any process to be able to determine the harvest at the end of the day. Now, for you to be able to do that, people, the farmers and everybody that participate will look at the issue of yield per acreage. And yield per acreage still has to do with technology of the seeds. And we mentioned them also here. Now, when you're going into that also, you're not going to quality control. Because from day one, if you're going to produce what by the end of the day, if we do certification and check it, and it does not comply with the specification that's required, at the end of the day, the exchange will not be able to take it off. So standardization is also very, very key in the process of whatever we're trying to do. And of course, you have the capital raising part of it and the other parts. Now, the key part of this discussion is the issue of the storage, the preservation, and the processing. These are very, very critical things that can determine food security at any point in time. Because it's one thing for you to produce, it's another thing for you to be able to store. If you cannot store, can you preserve? If you cannot preserve, can you process? So these are 3 different angles to the 3. Now, for these 3 to be in place, there must be the primary input. That's the production must be there. That is the production from the farms. If the production from a farm is there and these 3 is not there, those ones too will suffer. And some of the institutions that want to do processing, that want to do storage, that want to do preservation, the first thing that they'll be asking you is, do you have enough in space to cover for their business and cycle? If there's no consistency in the volume that's been produced, then they will not want to deploy. So you have a chicken and egg situation. Like Ramesh mentioned earlier, you're looking at the glass of milk. It can be half full, it can be half empty. For even ordinary laboratories that are for testing in Nigeria, some people will tell you that for the laboratories to deploy a laboratory in Nigeria, is there enough production of food to support whatever the laboratory is going to be doing? We spoke to the Nigerian Rails. Nigerian Rails said, yes, we can deploy and move goods from one location to the other. But is there enough production going on to support deploying a rail system from one location to the other? So we now have a situation of a vicious cycle. So the issue of food security is almost like a vicious cycle. When and how do we want to stop that vicious cycle? To make sure that we take it. And that is why the issue of the planting season comes in. Nigeria should be positioning themselves today, putting the structures in place for the next 3 years. And like has been mentioned on the issue of food security, there's the issue of the socioeconomic impact also in it. The socioeconomic impact has to do with the fact that to be able to reduce insecurity in some location, you have to improve the social status of the people in that location. So the exchange, what does the exchange do? The exchange puts down the rules, the ground rules for people to operate. We put down the standards by way of specification, the level of humidity for a particular product. How do you store it? And what is the specification and how you standardizing it? How do you store it? For example, if you want to store a typical product commodity, from the exchange point of view, we'll monitor from production. Then you look at the on-farm stores, how do they store it? You create a space for quality check. How do you do the checking? Then there are some people that are specialists in grading. How do you grade them, those commodities there before it moves into primary storage? When it now moves into primary storage, some people are there as experts to evaluate and then create a situation for evacuation. Now, for evacuation, for example, let me explain to you what evacuation is about. Evacuation from a warehouse has to do with first in, first out. Let me explain first in, first out to you. If you have a warehouse, big one, and you're taking maize into the warehouse, there's a tendency that the first set of maize that you put in will be at the back of the warehouse, right? And the last ones will be in front. So effectively, when you're going to evacuate, it's most likely you'll evacuate the last one that just came, and you leave the first one at the back, which will leave space for the product to start degrading. So even as at that, evacuation specialists will be in place to be able to create a structure whereby there's first in, first out. These are part of the things that affects post-harvest losses. How do you manage the produce and all that? Then the last part of it has to do with fumigation. How do you preserve? There should be experts in that place before we start looking at, we want to access the global demand chain. How do you get it to a shipment level? If you want to take it out of a country, how do you go to the various authorities that are going to sign off on it? These are just like a microcosm of what can be done. Now, the major thing is that the MD of NASA spoke at a program a while back, and he said that Nigeria has to move from agriculture to agribusiness. It's very important. We still have smallholder farmers that are still operating in a very, very small space. We need a situation whereby the private sector and the government come together to form an alliance whereby they assist these farmers to be able to move to the next level. And I'm happy there are so many cooperatives doing that to be able to support that particular ecosystem. Now, lastly, before I yield the floor to you, I'll still recommend what we call the intrastate government partnerships. There are some certain states in Nigeria that have a lot of capacity working in silos. Other states with capacity working in silos. There must be an intra-governmental alliance between these states to be able to ramp up capacity for them to be able to work together instead of duplicating various same infrastructure all over the place. For the records, the federal government of Nigeria has deployed enough infrastructure by way of silos in Nigeria, by way of warehouses that are not used in Nigeria, by way of standards organization in Nigeria that we are yet to start using. But because we always operate in silos, we don't have a combined position. And that particular part has to be addressed properly for us to be able to get a commercially viable economy whereby people are putting structures together and putting capacity together to be able to build up a proper ecosystem. Rafia, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keredoluwale. And building on your response, I'll go to Dr. Ojularo. So he's said a lot about what should be happening, but can you give us an idea of what exactly is happening, like what exchanges are doing currently, who they're working with, just an idea so that we get an understanding of the actual status quo?
Okay, thank you again, Rafiat. And I think the presentation by Hakim was spot on. And actually, we know that a commodity exchange is not a new development in Nigeria. It's been on since the commodity boards across various crops in Nigeria, how the commodity exchange have evolved. So if we understand that historically, and we also understand it from the perspective of inconsistency of policies and programs in Nigeria, as well as how those policies that government put in place, how they somersault. Of course, recently we heard the Central Bank of Nigeria banning the BDCs, making the foreign exchange rate to go haywire. So there's a lot of inconsistencies, and there's need to look into that. So with commodity exchange also, with one important understanding that we should have is that commodity exchange does not really stand on itself. Is not a platform, or is not a market or an exchange that is independent of other multivariate factors within the economy. So there are so many factors, so many dynamics that work together to make a typical commodity exchange to function profitably and to function efficiently, and also to function sustainably. But you find that in other parts of the world, especially developed countries, you've seen how commodity exchanges function efficiently, sustainably, to manage the cyclical nature of food demand as well as supply. But in Nigeria, it's not been like that. But of course, we've got successful commodity exchanges that are working so well, like the FX, like the Lagos one that Akin represents, the Lagos Food Exchange and Futures. So we know it's possible that it works. The private sector has shown us that it could work. Like Akin also said, that we need to see agriculture as a business in order to make it more efficiently operated and managed. But I think the government also needs to come in to see how to make that happen, because if you look at a typical food or agricultural value chain in Nigeria, every node within that value chain has got a lot of challenges that are yet to be plugged. And this is a country that depends so much on agriculture that up to 70, 80% of the labor force depend on agriculture. But you still see that the government doesn't seem to be taking that sector very seriously and looking at that sector from the agribusiness perspective. And the faster, the quicker, and the more expedient the government does that through its ministries, and looking at how the ministries could work together to plug that the bearer. And it has to be within every node within the value chain, just like the question you posed to Hacking, that how do you see the price stabilization and food security from the inputs point of view? So it starts with the input. If a value chain has, if the input section within a value chain has multiple challenges, then how would the other value chain operate? How would they function efficiently? They cannot. There's no way they function efficiently, and that's a typical situation in Nigeria, where right from the input stage there's challenge. Farmers are not having adequate inputs. But farmers are not having the right seedlings. Farmers are not being supported enough with the right agricultural extension services, as well as advisory services, to help them to produce efficiently and to help them to understand the cyclical nature of the crop in which they are operating. The government needs to, of course, I know FX, the Lagos Food Exchange and Futures they are trying their best. They still need to, every crop that as a food crop, to manage it very well. Government needs to come in. I know the CBN is doing that. CBN is trying to collaborate with the Security Exchange Commission to revive the Nigerian Exchange Commission. They're doing it, but much more still needs to be done to look at this intervention from a food systems dimension. Because of course, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals had a forum on food systems, and it ended yesterday. And the more government is able to look at the food systems in Nigeria, not only from the commodity exchange perspective, from But from the value chain perspective, who are the stakeholders? How could the stakeholders, the cooperative, the farmers cooperative, like Akin said, how could they be well empowered? How could they be well informed in terms of the right analytics that will make them make informed decisions on every crop? Then it will help to better enhance the usefulness and effectiveness of commodity exchange within the food systems in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was actually really elaborate. So, Ms. Abelo, I'm coming to you, and I'll take from what Architect Kabir said in the previous panel. He said something about coke being the only commodity that was the same price, or that it's the same price everywhere you go across the country, and that's valid. And I would take from the question I was going to ask, but someone in the audience did ask this question because, you know, when food is cheap at source, like really, really cheap, and then it comes to maybe Lagos, for example, and it's so much more expensive. So the question that the person asked from Stido is, how can we tackle the bottlenecks of logistics of moving farm produce from source? So how can we do that?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Akin and Dr. Odolaru, also for they have exhaustively explained and presented on commodities exchange, the rules, the current thing, how the commodities exchange affects what we do, and how it affects the general landscape and the value chain. So there's a lot, but we must really understand this from the standpoint of the smallholder farmer. Yes, there is, it's a whole value chain, like explained by Dr. Akin and Dr. Odularu. And then the systems must be in place. It's not in isolation. If price from, say, Kaduna for maize or for tomato move to Lagos, the bottlenecks are many, and they can't just be solved by one player or actor. It's all hands must be on deck, from the policymakers as the government to the various actors. So, and if we look at, take the primary actor, say the smallholder farmer, you see, we must understand the dangers that are looming ahead of us if we do not look at this thing holistically. So 80% of farmers in Nigeria are smallholder farmers. Hence, that's where our focus should be for price stabilization and food security. That question is rightly asked that, okay, from point A to B, from Kaduna to Lagos, from Kogi to Lagos. And it still comes back to the question Business Day is asking us, what role does the exchange plays in price stabilization and in food security? Hence, I'll take us back to the smallholder farmer, whereby if there's price transparency or discovery for the smallholder farmer, which is one of the roles of the exchange, is for price transparency, that the smallholder farmer is able to know what price this commodity is right from the source, where he is. So the exchange is supposed to provide that platform for price discovery. And with price discovery, we've started something, but it doesn't end there. There's financial inclusion. Financial inclusion, input financing, warehouse receipt systems. I'm currently with Collateral Management International. We do raise warehouse receipts on behalf of businesses, insurers, financiers, and food processors. But we only do that in a system whereby there are certified warehouses. And that's what the exchange should do, certify warehouses. And we, with our role, we come in to look at the quality parameters, which is also part of the whole thing. So there must be the collateral manager, there must be the smallholder farmer, there must be the commodities exchange, there must be the policy makers, all in tune together, not duplicating what we do, but taking on the various things that are already available within the value chain and upscaling those things so that there's scale of economies for the smallholder farmer. If he discovers the price, let's say, take an instance, he knows that this is the price today. And then he knows that he's supported through either an exchange or through a financier, say the bank. The banks must come to understand too that these commodities, there's a huge value there, which they can capture some of. So let's say the bank finance that farmer through the exchange or through whatever means, and then bring in the collateral manager to watch over that commodity which serves as a collateral. Now, we can now see that at that point, price stabilization or control or whatever is being addressed because now the farmer has access to finance, he's able to grow his produce at X price. And then when it comes to selling his produce, there's also, he's going through the exchange, which is an open price for everyone. So why someone will move from one point to the other and sell at X and the other moves and sell at Y is because there's divergent energies. Instead of us converging, the different actors and players converging to see that we support this smallholder farmer from X with finance, with input, with storage, with collateral management, with quality management. Now, if all these services are provided for about to the whole 80% that are the smallholder farmers in Nigeria, let's say we even take a chunk and provide these services to around 30% of this. Now, it means everything comes within a system, a certified system. And if it comes within a certified system, then there could be
what Lagos Commodities has been doing. So my second question is this. So going by all of this that you've said, is it really okay to have the expectation that people should, like stakeholders, or should there be some form of legislation, for example, or policy and at that to make sure that everybody goes through that process? Now, if the answer to that is yes, I'm preempting you that it will be yes. If the answer to that is yes, is that not contrary to what majority of people say when they say, oh, government is too involved in business and all of saying that we're trying to now look at agriculture as a business much more than just subsistence farming?
Okay, so you're very right. It starts with this, so that I don't take much time. It starts with there must be everything rises and falls on leadership. So certainly there would be policy, business environment still lies with government. A lot of it in terms of security, in terms of policy framework. So take, for instance, the warehouse receipt legislation that has been there for a while. In my own business, line of business in collateral management, I realized that most of financing for agri-commodities comes from banks outside of Nigeria. Most of the financing for agri-commodities comes. So now a good number of banks are coming in. But then it's still here and there. Now you can't take that in isolation and say, okay, private sector, okay, you just come in. When you come, if there's a legislation, say backing warehouse receipt systems that has been there at the National Assembly and it's out there, you see it gives comfort to local financiers, the banks and financial institutions within Nigeria. So that we cannot relegate policy, business environment to the background. Then, so to add that, the private sector initiative, a lot of them are happening, but there need to be, you see, we are as strong as our weakest link. So we can, as much as we do, I think it's Dr. Akin that said it, and also Dr. Adolo added somewhere too, we can't do this independently. So if Lagos Commodities Exchange is doing X, and say FX Commodities Exchange is doing Y, and say CMI is doing, you see, completely CMI works completely aloof of what Lagos Commodities Exchange is doing and what probably FX is doing and other exchanges and other actors. Sometimes there's an overlap, we go in, but the overlap, is it positive? Maybe not. So you see, what the private sector can do a lot, but then there needs to be a coherent connecting partner or force that will bring the private sector to do agribusiness in Nigeria. If not, we have many. We have Tribe Agri, we have Farm Crowd, we have this, we have everybody doing at a location at a point. But look at the effect. Is it trickling down enough? It's good, but could it be better? I think so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bello. So I'll come back to Mr. Akeredoluwale. Before I do that, I'll say a comment that someone made from the audience, that in making agriculture a business, there is need to manage profitably the intervention, in quotes, offered to the farmer, else you will be spoon feeding the business. So again, I like quick fire answers. So 1 minute, tell me what you think about that. Then we'll go to the achievements of Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange so far.
Thank you very much. I'm going to defy your 1 minute this time because there are some issues that you have raised that I need to address. Yeah, you see, first of all, if we have the apex regulatory body called the Securities and Exchange Commission. The Securities and Exchange Commission has a 10-year master plan that they're using to develop the capital market. Part of that was supposed to be to develop the commodities and ecosystem. And the Securities and Exchange Commission has been at the forefront in developing that commodities ecosystem. Now, in the ecosystem, like as I mentioned earlier, I just didn't want to dabble into details. For you to have a thriving commodities exchange, like you had mentioned earlier, you have the banks there that are going to settle the trades there. You have the collateral managers, you have the certification agents, you have the insurance companies that are going to insure the goods in transit, goods in warehouse there. You have the people that are going to trade the products there. Is a big gamut. You have rating agencies that are going to look at the transaction. You have trustees that can take possession of warehouses. You have custodians that can assist you with international transactions. It's a whole gamut of things. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there's a warehouse receipt builders there. But currently, the ISA, which SEC is working with, still allows and governs what is going on in the commodities ecosystem. And to support the ecosystem, SEC had put together so many various guidelines, crowdfunding guidelines, cryptocurrency guidelines, collateral managers guidelines, and so many of these guidelines to be able to expand that ecosystem to the level that the agricultural commodities, which had been undersupplied with liquidity and financial support, will be able to get this liquidity and financial support in a structured way. Because first of all, for people and banks to be able to participate in the ecosystem, they want to see that whatever they're going to be putting money into is highly de-risked. And the instruments that are going to be used are highly fungible. SEC is at the forefront of doing this. And I think I want to give it to them. They have been able to build a very robust financial sector, the capital market sector, to build up this particular public-private arrangement and to be able to grow the structured finance part of the ecosystem. At LCF, we have 4 asset classes, which of which agriculture is one of them. We have oil and gas, we have solid minerals, and we have currency. But today we're discussing agriculture today. And it was one of the things that had been mentioned about the link by spoon feeding the participant in the agri space. One of the major things that we must accept is what you have mentioned earlier. We keep saying that we don't want government in business. And at every point in time, we're mentioning government. in everything that they were doing. Most successful commodities ecosystem in any part of the world has been driven successfully by the private sector, not by government. And someone mentioned earlier that farmers actually move in some other countries with their helicopters and land on their farms. It is true. It is correct. If you look at the contribution of agriculture to our GDP, if it's distributed amongst the farmers, no farmer should be poor. I start wondering that why is it like this? It's because we have to move to agribusiness. And I'm happy that we're having this conversation today. What are the things that we need to do to support that ecosystem? The biggest problem was mentioned by the previous panelists is the issue of post-harvest losses. Post-harvest loss means that if a farmer produces whatever quantity in this particular year and he cannot store it and is unable to sell it on time and he loses it, it will be difficult for him to come back in the next planting season. Now that comes to the issue of a price discovery that you were discussing. If you have perishable goods that has a shelf life, and you realize that if you're not careful, you're going to lose out, what will you do with the goods? You will sell it at any price. That's one of the biggest problems farmers are facing today. Post-harvest losses. Do we have opportunities for preservation? Do you have opportunity for warehousing? Now, on the issue of asking whether the price in Lagos and price in Abuja or anywhere, how does it work? Look, if you have a structure which we are building, and if you have a structure whereby you have a warehouse in Katsina, you will have a warehouse in Sokoto, you have a warehouse in Abuja, anywhere. As long as the farmer moves the goods, aggregated goods, to a warehouse in any location, and it's taking off them, it's going to be taken at the same price at Abuja, at Sokoto, at Abuja, or Lagos, anywhere. Now, the movement subsequent for the other set of people is now left for the people that are going to buy in the secondary market. So effectively, the major issue is information dissemination. And the second part is, are there offtake agreements in place to be able to take this off the farmers when they become desperate, particularly because there are no structured approach to be able to do to correct post-harvest losses? Do we have preservations in place? Do we have warehouses in place? For some that produce maybe livestock and all that, do we have cold storage in place? Well, I was at a program showing that one man said he brought in 1,200 baskets of tomato from the north, and he was able to salvage only about 80 of it because the truck first of all broke down. By the time he got to Lagos, all the tomatoes were gone. In the next time he said he was going to do this, he used a cooling system to bring the same tomatoes to Lagos, and he didn't lose any out of it. But can every farmer have access to this? No. These are sectors that we still need to build, that the commodity ecosystem is building on the issue of preservation, on the issue of processing, and on the issue of storage. When you have this, you put farmers in a comfort zone. Now, what are the other things that the commodities exchanges do? The commodities exchanges also assist farmers to be able to scale up their activity in the ecosystem. If you have a track record that you produced X amount of sorghum on 10 acres of land in the last 3 years, what it means is that you can do a forward arrangement whereby you tell people that I want to expand my activity about 10 or 20 acres of land, and this is what I'm going to be getting out of it. Then people will be able to invest in it, and you'll be able to grow in that particular space. The offtake is important. Capital formation is important from the commodity ecosystem. Capital raising is important, and also price discovery is important. And for us to do all this, fungibility is very key, and the risking. When we have the risk ecosystem, whereby banks see that when they put money into it, they're not going to lose the money. They see capital flow flowing into that place. Thank you, Rafi. I'm so sorry that I took a little bit of 1 or 2 minutes of your time.
No, that's fine. So I'm going to take it that you've given us your pattern shot. So Dr. Odularu, please don't defy my 1 minute this time. Let's just have your pattern shots, and I'll come to Mr. Bello, and we can come to the close of this panel.
Okay, thank you again, Rafiat. I think one perspective to deploying a commodity exchange or future exchange as a tool to stabilize prices, especially now that food inflation is a big problem in Nigeria, is for the government and the private sector to work together. Of course, the question to ask again is, of course, the private sector is in business to make profit. So is the government in business to go make losses all the time? Does the officials, those we ask to represent us in the federal ministries, are they supposed to go to the office late and keep wasting our taxes? Do we pay taxes to the government to make losses? So government too should continually understand the business of making business, making its own business a business. In addition to supporting the private sector by providing the right regulatory framework and the legislative tools that will help the private sector to do its job and make business profitably, government should also see it from that perspective. So I will quickly touch on the technical committee on enhancing commodity trading ecosystems that the government put in place on the recommendations to help to enhance the capacities and the capabilities of the commodity exchange in Nigeria. So there's like a plan, like a 5-year plan, not 2019 to 2020, the first phase, the second phase, there's third phase, there's fourth phase, which I saw. But I was just thinking that with the capacities that Nigeria has, because the first phase is focusing on staple foods, because government, whether government likes it or not, it's got a big responsibility to play in making sure that every Nigeria has food to eat. Now, when you go to the next phase of export commodities, the private sector has a big role to play because the private sector wants to make money and wants to ensure that the crops in which it trades is making money on this. So this technical committee and the recommendations they gave the first phase focusing on the staple food, the grains, the rice and the soya beans and the likes and the veggies and things like that. The second phase on export commodities like cocoa, palm oil. But I think instead of having a 5-year plan with the resources and the capacities that Nigeria have, they could actually do everything together. They can have like a 1-year plan because of the way things are changing and this post-COVID era. Instead of doing one phase, then going to the next one, like in the olden days, like the ancient times, why not bring all the stakeholders, bring the Lagos Commodity and Future Exchange, bring African Exchange Commodity Exchange Effect, bring the Nigerian Commodity Exchange, bring them together, bring all the stakeholders, look at what everyone can do systematically, and also making sure that they do it at once rather than doing it over like a 5-year period and things like that. So I think that will help to make the commodity exchange more relevant and also help the food prices in Nigeria to be more stable, and also touch on another perspective is, of course, there could be losses, there could be waste. There's this perspective also, food banking intervention. Food banking has a big role to play in all this food system dynamics, because at times, like Akin said, that first in, first out, what if the private sector or the commodity exchanges are unable to sell, they are unable to sell or trade on certain commodities? Then there should be another platform, a food banking, where they put it, in which the vulnerable, the less privileged will be able to access that food before it expires the next day. Because there are plenty of hungry Nigerians that need to access food, instead of making them to waste and not able to sell them because they are expired. So that would be my parting shots. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Bello, 1 minute, please.
It's really my privilege being part of this meeting. A lot has been said, a lot can be done. The commodities exchange within the past 5, maybe 10 years have done a lot significantly. And I think they were the bedrock for many of the agribusinesses we see, coming up. So they did a lot. One clear area that I think we need to do more is our banks. Our banks need to play a lot more. Financial institutions generally need to play a lot more. Them seeing agri-commodities as a viable tool or a viable investment for them. I think that role needs to play out more. One role too that needs to play out more is I think a lot can be done also by the commodities exchange to expand their reach. Still, the smallholder farmers, there are a lot, there are many. We have a teeming population. If we can reach one smallholder farmer, we've added to our food security, we've added to price stabilization. So long as they can access inputs, So long as they can go to their farms, securely and do their farms and come back with their harvest when it's harvest, so long as they can have access to good storage in warehouses, and so long as they can now discover prices that are comparative and sell those produce. If we multiply this aggregate number of smallholder farmers with the certified systems and processes that the different actors and players can bring to bear, then I believe food stabilization, price stabilization and food security is at our reach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I just want to crave Business Day's indulgence for 1 minute, like an actual minute this time. We've said a lot about, most of all the talk has been about crops and things like that, but I just wanted us to say, Mr. Akeredolu, something on livestock.
Thank you very much. We had concentrated on the crops and all that. What I want to say on the livestock part of it is that as much as possible for us to be able to support this agribusiness, to separate the politics that we mentioned from business. I think in the Mighty Allah, the various people in this particular space to reach out to these exchanges so that there can be structured approach to some of these cattle heads and how they can be listed on exchanges, how capital can be raised, and how they can expand their scope for to be able to build a bigger traction in whatever is being done. There are so many other countries. In fact, there are some countries in the world that part of their GDP, a better part of it is focused on dairy and livestock alone. And that can be done and can be replicated in Nigeria. I know the volume, about almost 5,000 heads of cows are slaughtered daily in Lagos. So you can imagine what goes on in Nigeria. We are looking forward to meeting with the Mighty Allah, the people in the livestock space, to come to the commodity ecosystem so that we can build capacity together for us to be able to supply this protein into the ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Dr. Odularu, Mr. Akeredolu, Mr. Bello. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, there's never enough time to actually explore all the issues and prefer solutions and all that. So we'll hope that this would be like a catalyst for more conversations to happen and for actual concrete actions to be taken. So thank you again, everybody. So now I'll hand over back to David Ibidapo to take panel 3.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you, Rafi. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafiat. So let me confirm everyone can still hear me. It's been an interesting section so far, and I'm happy to be back here. So let me confirm everyone can hear me. Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Right about now, we will be swinging into the third panel, which will also be the last panel for today. And we'll be talking about cushioning the financial impact on agribusinesses post-COVID-19. Cushioning the financial impact on agribusinesses post-COVID-19. So for our attendees, this is just to remind everyone that to drop your comments, don't forget to just go on www.slido.com. Then at the space where you have to impute a code, you'll be imputing #agric21, that's AGRIC, all in capital letter, then 21. So you can drop your questions even as the conversation is ongoing, and we would attend to as many questions as we can. All right, so to discuss this crucial subject matter with me, so I have 3 panelists here. And we have Mr. Darlington Lawson, he's the Executive Director of NASA. We have Professor Sule Ochai, he's a Senior Policy Consultant in Agriculture and Food Systems Agriculture and Agro-Industry Department of African Development Bank. Then we have the last but not the least, we have, please permit me if I don't pronounce this name well, Kutzai Gumuyu, Divisional Head, Agribusiness FCMB. Right. So very shortly, I'll be reading their profile to you, so we just have an idea of who these great men are. So we have Mr. Darlington. Mr. Darlington has over 20 years banking experience with the leading Nigerian banks, which includes Intercontinental Bank, Zenith Bank, United Bank for Africa, and Keystone Bank, where he covered roles in marketing, credits, and financial analysis, credit portfolio management, treasury and financial institutions, relationship management, and so on. So proud to join NASA Microfinance Bank. He was a senior partner at Obidel Consult Incorporation, a financial service provider. Okay, so Professor Sule Ochai is currently a senior economic policy consultant on agriculture and food systems with the Agriculture and Agro-Industry Department at the African Development Bank headquarters, Abidjan, Ivory Coast, where he works in the front office of the director, supporting and advising and anchoring several agricultural development and economic policy related projects, interventions, initiatives, and flagships and mandates of the department. Then finally, Mr. Gumuyu, the divisional head of agribusinesses of FCMB, is an experienced agri-finance consultant who has demonstrated history of working in the banking industry. Is skilled in financial risk, business planning, risk management, corporate finance, and banking. Is a strong finance professional with a master's, with an MBA focused in accounting and finance from the University of Zimbabwe. And finally, he heads the Agribusiness division of FCMB, where he set up the Agribusiness unit, designing and implementing systems for the agribusiness credit management. So we are having these gentlemen on this panel today, and they will be doing justice to the subject matter, cushioning the financial impact on agribusinesses post-COVID. All right, so I think I will start by telling everyone to just give a brief introduction of their work at their current companies, right? So starting with Mr. Darlington Lawson. So in just 1 minute, give us a brief introduction of what NASA does and how NASA is playing in the agribusiness, how the crucial role NASA is playing in the agribusiness. Over to you, sir.
All right, thank you very much, David Ibidapo. My name is Darlington Wilson, as you rightly said, and I'm Executive Director of Banking at Nicel Microfinance Bank. Nicel Microfinance Bank is, if you like, a financial institution that was set up, that was created, basically to address the need to ensure that finance, that's affordable financing, gets to the grassroots farmers, who we call the smallholder farmers, and of course, this small and medium enterprises of the country, because these, we believe, based on the views and guidelines as directed by the central bank, will be the engine to drive growth in Nigeria. So Nicel Microfinance Bank set up in 2019, March, to cater to the needs of these levels of customers, if you like, what we refer to as those on the lower cadre of the economic ladder. And of course, especially to drive the need for food sufficiency. And so we were set up to be one of the participating financial institutions of the central bank on most of its intervention products. What we've done so far speaks for itself. We started out with particularly the AGSMIS Agribusiness Small and Medium Enterprises Investment Scheme, which was basically to address the SME sector. Then, of course, we were given the rights to to intervene in the Anchor Borrowers Program. And we've also made significant progress in that regard with handling quite a number of associations, farmers associations, and prime anchors. Recall that you would need to also know that the Anchor Borrowers Program has the private participation and even the public sector participation, and of course the model that we call the prime anchor model. So, having said that, we've recently, after COVID, which was the pandemic that shook the entire world, there was need for intervening to ensure that people do not suffer too much, especially businesses and even households, from the impact of the pandemic. And so the CBN set up the targeted credit facility and made, of course, the NISA Microfinance Bank to be the sole intervening bank in that regard. And we've done very well in that regard. I will not go into the figures yet, unless it's part, you want us to do that immediately, but suffice it to say that we've given out credits in excess of 500 billion to over close to 1 million beneficiaries across those 3 product lines I've mentioned. There are other products. The National Youth Investment Fund is one where we were directed to help channel funds to the youths in Nigeria by the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development in conjunction with the Central Bank. I also did not want to go into this, but let's talk about NISA. It's a baby of the Bankers Committee in conjunction with the Central Bank, especially the governor as chairman of the Bankers Committee, to address that sector, the SME sector. Don't forget, they therefore set up this bank as a vehicle for that process. So I will stop here so that others can speak, and then we take the details as we go along. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Lawson, for that brief introduction about NASA and what NASA does. Okay, so I would go straight to Professor Sule Uchai of the Department of Agriculture and Agro-Industry, African Development Bank. So my question to you, the African Development Bank plays a huge role in supporting African countries, like we all know, in the agribusiness sector. Do you want to tell us what AFDB and in particular your department, that's the Agro-Industry Department, what have you guys done so far in the agribusiness sector? And where are you now, and how are you executing your mandate?
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so very much, moderator. It's my pleasure to be with you all here, and my greetings to my co-panelists. Dr. Fregene Martin, the director of the department, Agriculture and Agro-Industry Department, initially was scheduled, to make this presentation, but unfortunately, it's not able to be here because of other engagements. So wanted me to come speak briefly on the questions you just raised. We all know, we know about African Development Bank. There can be an agriculture and agro-industry department without what the African Development Bank is doing. So I will start from what the African Development Bank is doing and then narrow it down, sizzle it down to a high. So African Development Bank, is the premier multilateral financial institution for African regional member countries. It was established in 1964. We have the 58 African countries, as stakeholders, and then 27 non-African countries, we call them non-regional members, with authorized 93 billion at the time of its inception, and usually, source its resources from a capital market. There are 3 windows through which the bank works. There's the one we call ADB, which is African Development Bank, and then the second one, African Development Fund, ADF. That was established in 1972 with a subscription of 36 billion at that time, with 27 states participating, including the regional member countries we just talked about, dealing with concessional financing terms. And then we have the one for our country, Nigeria, the Nigerian Trust Fund. So those are the three windows. And we work in several places. Most of the countries in Africa, 54 of them. And the kind of work we do has been compartmentalized into five major development priorities. And this, we call them the Light Up Feed Africa, Industrialize Africa.
So am I the only one? I think lost Mr. Chide.
He went off.
Okay, so hopefully we'll be back soon. But without wasting much of our time, I think I would just go to Mr. Kumonyu. Please, so you're speaking, sir. You may just help correct the pronunciation of your name. So you've helped establish FCMB's agribusiness arm, and so can you tell us the journey so far and your impacts in the sector in just 1 minute before we dive into the main conversation of the day?
Thank you. FCMB Agribusiness was established in 2012, January, and then the agribusiness book was about 0.8% of total assets of the bank. We have managed to grow that asset base in agribusiness to a peak of 11% in March this year, with very acceptable quality of the book. FCMB is one bank that is really set its sights on growing the agribusiness portfolio, being a sector that has a lot of impact on development, especially on women, on smallholder farmers, as well as on the youth. We have managed to bring in products and assisted in making sure the agricultural value chain in Nigeria is enhanced and improved. We have financed a number of projects in agricultural mechanization, in oil palm, in maize, rice, in cocoa. And we have seen the book grow and grow. And we have even grown even during the COVID times because we have a lot of goodwill from our clients. Our clients keep on growing their business, and we also keep on getting referrals from some of our clients as well. So we believe agricultural finance is the way to go. And we believe it's a growth area and very sustainable. As long as human beings continue to exist, they will require to eat. And it's one sector which is inflation proof. And in terms of earnings, that is, because each and every one, inflation and recession proof, because each and every one of us will require to eat every day. So demand for agricultural produce will always be there as long as human beings continue to exist. So we believe it's a very sustainable business which will continue to grow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gumuyu. Thanks for that brief explanation of what you do with FCMB. Right, so I think Mr. Sule Ochai is back up, so I would give him the opportunity to round up what he was trying to tell us before. Mr. Ochai.
It's unfortunate. These are things we go through every day in our part of the world, internet connectivity problem. Anyway, like I was talking about, you know, we have the capacity. Africa has the capacity to feed 9 billion people by 2020, but we all know the barriers. And one of the key barriers here is limited access to finance, to procure fertilizers and technology, and even adverse agribusiness environment. So those are the challenges relevant to what we're talking about here. So how do we go about our business at the African Development Bank? The focus is on what we said, the Feed Africa strategy, which is an offshoot of Nigerian Agricultural Transformation Agenda that was implemented by our former president, Dr. Kumi Adesina, who is currently the president of African Development Bank. The priorities are to increase productivity, greater investment in infrastructure, expanded agricultural finance, improve agribusiness environment, increase inclusivity, sustainability, and nutrition, and enhance partnership. The goals are to end poverty, hunger, and malnutrition, achieve net export status for agricultural commodities, and eliminate malnourishment for about 240 million Africans or people, double Africa's share of market value to selected agricultural commodities. How do we do that? What is the approach? The approach is government-enabled, government-enabled, private sector-led, and this we target to private sector entity. And the windows are sovereign by way of support to non-sovereign operation, targeting large agro companies and private equity funds and impact. So how do we operate? We operate through agricultural value chain development, which encapsulate in the Feed Africa strategy. The vision, the goals, and outcome, they're all put together and have 7 enablers. We call them enablers. And these enablers are to increase productivity, realize the value of increased production, increase investment and enabling infrastructure, soft and hard infrastructure, catalyze flow of agricultural finance, create enabling agricultural business, like I've just said, and increase inclusivity, making sure that all these businesses are included and not excluded. So what are the products? How do we go about doing this? How do we go about doing our business? I've told you about non-sovereign agricultural loan currency and syndicated loans, partial risk guarantee, partial credit guarantee, and equity and quasi-equity. Loan products. Yes, loan products. And what I'm going to briefly tell you what we have achieved so far through agricultural value chain and what we are going to do and what are the projects in online pipeline projects to address the crisis that have erupted as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll start with several case studies. For example, we've administered and disbursed about 74 million to Republic of Uganda. And the objective of that project is to design and redevelop markets in 24 municipalities and town councils. And the beneficiary are 7 urban authorities serving approximately 522 households, which 88 are female-headed households. And the outcome, well-rated market hygienic environment. Unfortunately, I can't show you the picture so that you can understand what I'm talking about. The Rice Value Chain Transformation Program. Okay. Well, that's how we do it. And my moderator is telling me this is not the time to talk about the impact and the outcomes yet. So we'll talk about that later. And then what we have done as response to the COVID pandemic with Feed Africa. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ochai. We'll come back to that definitely to ask those questions. All right, so at this point, we will, so Mr. Lawson, right? So you mentioned, you were, let me use the word, tempted to mention how much you are giving out in terms of finance loans so far. I would love to ask, right, because I feel it's a pertinent question, right? how would you track how would you say the performance of the loans have been so far? Are these investments being serviced appropriately? Are people paying back these loans?
Okay, thank you very much once again. You know, it's a very tightrope I'm walking here, because on one hand, I have to speak for NISA Microfinance Bank, and then on the other hand, the progenitor of all of this, all of the interventions and all of these policy movements towards ensuring stability in the system in the Central Bank of Nigeria, they will have their own figures. I'll focus on what we do here. Of course, it's a general problem in Nigeria, the issue of credit, the capacity of beneficiaries of credit facilities to repay, whether on account of willingness or real capacity or even character. But as a bank, we've leveraged critically on digital technology to ensure that we're able to deliver timely interventions. It's been difficult, I must tell you. The volume of loans we've given, I stand bold to say that no bank in Nigeria has been able to put out so much in terms of volume and in terms of value to the public in the short time we had to do it. And you understand the need to ramp up these numbers, because there was a pandemic, people were suffering, obviously, the impact. And the CBN thought this was the way to go. It started with the 50 billion targeted credit facility. When that was exhausted, because people just caught on, and naturally the applications kept pouring in. In fact, we have to shut the portal at some point to say, look, we have enough of applications to provide succor to people, and we thought we should address those before we came back again. Now, as I speak to you on the targeted credit facility, we've done well over, as a bank, we've done close to 300 billion. The CBN has given us more over that, but we are still, it depends on the timing to disbursement. And on the Anchor Borrowers Program, which is targeted at smallholder farmers and the value chain in the agricultural process, we've been able to disburse over 30 billion naira to these farmers. Of course, the CBN, on their part, have given us close to 42 billion. We can say that here now. And of course, I did mention on the Agribusiness, which is the agribusiness, the one for SMEs, a total of about over 26,000 SMEs have benefited. And the figure is closing on 100 billion naira that we've been able to dispose. And these are not small figures by any stretch of the imagination, when you consider the fact that these sectors were suffering a lack of access to affordable credit. Not to talk of the terms of those credit facilities. The CBN governor graciously extended moratorium on these facilities because of the pandemic twice now. So we're talking about making it easy for people to repay. Now I'm approaching the issue of repayment. We would want to use this medium to reiterate the fact that these loans, the emphasis is on loans here, are supposed to be repaid. A lot of people, when these monies come out to them, have this mindset that, oh, it's from government, therefore it must be a grant of some sort. It's not a grant, it's a loan. If there is no repayment, there will be we can't recycle the funds to other needy areas. Let's be very careful about this. And so we appeal to every recipient to make those arrangements. Now, on our part, I will focus now on the TCF, the targeted credit facility, for the COVID loans. We call them COVID loans just for want of easy identification. When the pandemic gets to stop, it will stop at some point. We expect people to now respect the terms of the offer. Everyone got an offer letter, accepted the terms of the offer, which includes the fact that there's a moratorium 1 year. Then if it extended a bit again, we extended accordingly. When it's time, you will get your notification to start making repayments. What we advise people to do, and most of them complied, is open a separate account to save money as you go along. Now that the easy period is here, the period of moratorium, save money so that when it's time to repay, you simply instruct the bank to take from that account, if you understand what I mean. In other words, we create a debt service reserve account, so to speak. Now, addressing your question directly, we've not come to the time critically when repayments become necessary for the targeted credit facility. But when that time comes, we expect people to respond. The one where we've been at before now is the Agribusiness Small Medium Enterprises Investment Scheme loans. Now, there have been challenges. Naturally, there will be challenges. In Nigeria, we have challenges of flood, we have challenges of insecurity, we have challenges ranging from a general lull in business. Somebody has taken a loan, gone into a business, and there is some policy shift that affects the business, or the pandemic, for instance. Obviously, there are challenges, but we are always there to speak with them. Most of them come to us for restructuring of those loans, and we've given them our ears, we've lent them our ears, and we've listened, and we've reacted accordingly. So basically, that's where we are with repayments. I repeat, just for summary, targeted credit facilities are not due yet because of the moratorium issued by the central bank. However, we are preparing the minds of our people to pay back. On the ASMIS, which has been long way, we are still on that. We have ways of, we reach out to the customers, and we ensure that the accounts are situated in branches, so the branch staff go talking to these customers. We will be positive about repayment for now. When the time comes, when the trouble comes, you'll probably hear. Okay. Now, on a final note, and I want to keep this as my last. It's something I refer to as our trump card. The central bank also has the Global Standing Instruction System of Recovering Loans, which is the GSI. You may not have heard about it, but it gives the lender, which is us in this case, Nigeria Microfinance Bank, the authority to seek out any funds warehoused by any borrower in any bank other than our bank, and ensure that we recover monies from. But that will come at a time when we've exhausted every means of getting repayments. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lawson, for that. Really grateful for that. We actually have a question here. I think it would be good for Mr. Ochai to give response to this question, and also Mr. Lawson, because this question directly relates to you. Before I move to Mr. Gumuyi, to ask my next question. So someone is asking here that how do we access financial assistance from NISA and African Development Bank? So let's go with Mr. Sule first. Mr. Ochai, can we get a response to that question? So let me repeat, how do we access finance assistance from NISA and African Development Bank?
Okay. Assessing financial support from African Development Bank. African Development Bank is a multilateral financial institution. It's not a commercial bank. It's a bank that deals with development amongst its regional member countries. Individual enterprises or businesses, you can only access financial instruments and support from the bank via your regional member countries. For example, if you're in Nigeria, if we're working in Nigeria and Nigeria has a project that African Development Bank is funding or providing financial support, you can, for example, if you have a business like we're talking about agribusinesses now, if there's a project or a flagship or an intervention that is being supported by African Development Bank via Federal Ministry of Agriculture, you don't come to African Development Bank directly, but you can benefit from the products and the services and the financial support through Federal Ministry of Agriculture. So in other words, you don't have direct access as a business, as a business to secure from African Development Bank.
Thank you, Mr. Ochai. Thank you for that clarity. So, Mr. Lawson, please, can you quickly, in a minute, just give explanation?
Basically, sorry, we are still talking. I guess it was slow. Basically, every Nigerian has the right to apply to NISA Microfinance Bank for support, so long as it is within the confines of what we are supposed to deliver. And we are strictly set up to offer to channel intervention loans out. So I've mentioned all the kinds of loans we do here: the Agribusiness Small Medium Enterprises Investment Scheme, also known as AGSMIS, the Anchor Borrowers Program, the Targeted Credit Facility, currently covering COVID loans, as we call it. The National Youth Investment Fund, that one is pretty much done. I don't think there's much room left. We also do national. That's not been approved yet, but it's in the pipeline. The National Gas Expansion Plan of the Central Bank, it's coming. Now, so long as your requirements are tailored under the guideline provisions of these loans, feel free to go on our portal, because we go digital. Go on our portal and apply. Follow the rules of application. It gets to us. Now, understand this. We have millions of people seeking these intervention loans. We are not going to sit down here and say we will meet everybody's requirement. So there will be lots of people who will fall through the cracks. Let's respect that. And it's not we also evaluate, it's not everyone who will pass the evaluation process, but we try to ensure that there is even spread, geographically speaking, so that there is no one area complaining that, oh, I'm being marginalized or whatever. We ensure even spread. We use population statistics to guide our decision making in that regard, and other criteria which I won't mention here to decide who qualifies. The final approver is the Central Bank of Nigeria, and once they give the funds approved, our job is to deliver. So let every Nigerian feel free to apply, but also understand that application does not necessarily mean approval. Okay, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lawson, for that. I guess the attendee who asked that question is clear on his questions. All right, so I'll be going straight to Mr. Gumuyu. So this question is particularly, now we're looking at food security, right? And we know that the smallholder farmers actually play a major role in this, in ensuring, boosting food security, right? And also we know that one of the major challenges as identified by almost all our panelists is the access to finance, right? And when we get this finance, what the major use it to do is to buy inputs, fertilizers, and the rest to ensure that they're able to have a productive planting season, right? And we know commodities exchanges play a major role and are actually very close to the smallholder farmers. So in your own view, right, because a lot of farmers complain of the fact that the collateral that has been demanded to access this loan is not actually, it's something they can't provide, right? And are there other strategies that you think is best that microfinance banks, commercial banks, and the likes of African Development Bank can actually adopt to ensure that farmers still get access to finance, to loans?
Yeah, thank you very much for those questions. I believe in Africa, throughout Africa, we've got an elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is basically the land tenure systems of smallholder agriculture, where the farmers themselves don't own the land which they produce on. It's almost like a land that is given in trust. Because of that, they cannot use that land to go and borrow from the banks. And apart from that, smallholder farmers are in themselves small businesses. The amount of time and effort that a banker puts on a credit of 200,000 naira or ₦1 million is probably the same as the effort that one would put on 100 million naira. Dealing with the farmer on a one-to-one, it's very expensive for the bank. Monitoring is very expensive. Approval is very expensive. So the only way of trying to reduce or making it easier for smallholder farmers to access finance is if they were under an outgrower model. And an outgrower model actually has a processor or an aggregator who aggregates the farmers, and they themselves order fertilizers in bulk, chemicals in bulk, and when the farm, and also offer extension services. They also offer transportation of these inputs to the farmers. And at the end of the day, when the farmer is produced, they provide a ready market for that produce to come to the aggregator or the processor. And that way the farmer then repays that facility. We are seeing that being a very effective way of financing smallholder farmers, where the aggregator or the processor, because they are big enough, they can go and negotiate with the bank for a loan to buy these fertilizer chemicals in bulk and distribute to the farmers. And when they now have the produce from the farmers, they are able to go and negotiate with bigger off-takers, or they themselves process and value add on this produce and sell to clients or to consumers, which enables the farmer to, one, get away from the middleman who actually gains a lot out of the farmer's sweat, and also enables farmers. We have some schemes that we have financed where the farmers under those schemes are getting 38% better prices than if they had been selling their produce through the middleman. So these innovative ways where we are using outgrower models or using an agricultural value chain based financing model is the best way to reach the African farmer. It solves a lot of issues. One, it solves the collateral issues. It solves the, if the farmer is not that educated, they cannot put in a proposal. So the aggregator themselves now bridge that gap. And also now solves the problem where banks are looking at a ready market for the farmers' produce. They themselves produce a ready market for that. So it remarkably reduces the risk of lending to these smallholder farmers as well. And it becomes a win-win situation. We have financed some of the schemes where repayment rates are as high as 99.9%, with the lowest that we got under these outgrower models at about 95%. So it's something that works. It's something that solves a lot of issues and problems in the agricultural value chain. And it also enables digitization of the farmers, because these aggregators and processors, they also come in with digital solutions to manage these farmers. At the end of the day, innovations are coming in, risk is being reduced, and it's a win-win situation for the bank, for the aggregator, and for the farmers. And at the end of the day, food inflation is also reduced.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Dumunyu. And because of time, I think I've gotten a notification to round up. However, I would love to throw these questions to Mr. Lawson and also Mr. Ochai, right? So we've seen that a lot of banks, commercial banks, are kind of not really willing to lend to this part of the sector because of the riskiness, the unclarity in the sector, information asymmetry. And also if you look at from the aspect of foreign direct investment into this space, it's just barely 2% of the total capital importation into the economy, right? So in your own view, right, the question for Mr. Lawson, in your own view, how can we boost more capital? How can we unlock finance in this sector, increasing the exposure of foreign investors into the space, and also I think this should be for Mr. Ochai, right? How can we leverage on commodities exchange? Now, speaking on the old collateral issue, right? Some commodities exchanges have said, have proposed that it is better to use a commodity as a collateral than properties as collaterals, right? Which kind of almost solves the issue of the riskiness in loan default, right? Because these farmers would definitely produce, and these commodities can be used to repay back the loans. So how can we leverage on commodities exchanges to ensure we boost food security? So I'll start from Mr. Lawson. Mr. Lawson, please, in just 1 to 2 minutes, I wanted to make your response points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What you've mentioned is been a perennial problem. In fact, you are correct about the fact that commercial banks, hitherto, there was a time they were encouraged because there was if you like, a tax waiver on interest income earned by banks when they lend for commercial, for agricultural purposes. But when you make losses, you find that a tax waiver is not commensurate with the kind of loss you make because of a lot of issues. One of them, key to the factors that would ensure repayment and therefore trust in the system, is the issue of timeliness. Can you hear me, sir? You can hear me, right? Great.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. The issue of timeliness in delivery of the loans, which is one of the things that the CBN tried to address. We have a calendar showing the seasonality of products, the produces that are, the commodities and produces that are financed. You need to understand the seasonality and key into it in a timely way. 2 is the issue of monitoring. It's important to monitor these farmers and the entire value chain, agri-value chain, so that you keep everybody doing the right thing. If people work in consonance and deliver the inputs to the farmers at the right time, monitor the season to harvest time, and then ensure that the off-takers take the goods and pay for them, we would not have issues of repayment and trust, because what you've described is a trust issue. When people are refusing to lend to sectors, it's a trust issue. 2, and more importantly, we need to have faith in the system. If everybody works together and there's faith in the system, the commodity exchanges do have a role to play. The national registry has a role to play in some ways too. Central bank, obviously the big players in the system. If we all have faith in the system, I think we can get to a point where lending or financing the sector will not be an issue. Lastly, infrastructure, or if you like, a framework to guide this is important. We are approaching that. There's been various meetings held in various capacities, financial system stability going on, many things going on at the same time, including the financial inclusions group. When we put all of this together, I'm sure that we will achieve the goals that the country requires in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Thank you for that. So, Mr. Ochai, can you just lend your thoughts on this question in 1 to 2 minutes?
I think Darlington Lawson has gone eloquently at the granular level of the question, and he has responded appropriately. What I would like to add is, what do we do? African Development Bank is doing to de-risk and making financial products available to SMEs and small-scale. You are aware of a 10 billion COVID-19 rapid response facility that was made by the president. And what is that? Trying to ensure that there's liquidity in the system made available to regional member countries, and they can use to de-risk, risk rigidity in the economy. And we do that through 3 pillars. deferral of debt servicing payments. In that case, we made 675 million allocated to support requests from private sector clients, emergency liquidity facility, and trade financing and guarantees to the amount of 270 million, and that of emergency liquidity to tune of 405 million US dollars. It's the same thing we did when we were in Nigeria with the NISAL. Commercial banks were not ready to lend to small-scale farmers and small guys in the agribusiness sector. So what we did was to collaborate with the CBN, made some money available to them so that we became the guarantor of lending to small-scale farmers. At the broader level, you are also aware of what we call affirmative AFAWA. We call it AFAWA. AFAWA in the sense that it's affirmative finance action for women in Africa. Women usually are disadvantaged when it comes to finance for their businesses.
Yeah.
What we did was to make some money available to the commercial bank. To regional member countries via their commercial, via their central banks and commercial banks to de-risk lending to women business owners in Africa, and that has been wonderful. So, in a nutshell, what we are doing here is to de-risk. And how do we do the de-risking? Making resources available to regional member countries via commercial, their central banks and commercial banks, so that they can make money or finances available to small-scale businesses in the agricultural space.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ochai. That's good.
Hello, you are muted.
We're not hearing you.
Not muted.
Mr. Lawson.
Sorry.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. So thank you to all our panelists for lending their thoughts on this crucial subject matter. Thank you, Mr. Darlington Lawson, Mr. Sule Ochai, Mr. Gumuyu. Thank you very much. So at this junction, I'll be handing over to Dr. Ogo Okiti, MD of Business Day. Thank you very much.
Mr. Moderator, you say we're coming back to me. You never came. Just to remind you anyway, but that's fine.
Oh, so sorry about that, sir. Thank you.
David, thank you so very much for moderating that session of very, very powerful people that are shaping agricultural progress in Nigeria, especially on the finance side. I mean, I'm just simply grateful for the insight and for the knowledge that you all have shared here this morning and afternoon. I am particularly grateful, especially because I know that you all are very, very busy people. So it means so much to Business Day that you have taken time out to be with us this morning and, of course, share your insights and the knowledge of what is happening in the industry. We are just simply grateful. I would also like to thank all those on the panel earlier. That's the first and the second panel as well. And of course, for also sharing their own ideas of how we can make progress. I've taken some notes here and I can say at least two of them. For me, there are two things that are very, very clear from the discussions that I've listened to this morning. And it is that scale is very, very important. If we are going to achieve the kind of progress that we want in agriculture and of course in relation to food security, then we must scale up very, very quickly. And I'm also very delighted that this scale is already happening. I mean, we are now having big, massive companies making significant investment in agriculture, whether it's backward and of course, whether it's in the is in the production. I mean, making them into industrial goods. I mean, I am just so delighted with the progress that we have seen in the last few years. So that is the progress. But it is also very clear in the discussion this morning that why that progress is on one side, if we are not careful, we will also start to lose some of the progress that we are making because of the security challenges that has developed. And as I said at the start of this conference, I said that in the last few years, we are now beginning to think not only of how do we produce enough, we have now started to think of how we protect those that produce and of course what they produce. And I really do hope, and I encourage the government that we find a solution to this problem as quickly as possible so that we do not lose a generation of farmers, whether it's small scale, and of course, it may begin to infiltrate into the large scale farms as well. So I really hope that the points, the ideas, the discussions, and of course, the insights that have been shared this morning are useful to our policymakers, useful to our business leaders that have gathered here. And of course, we journalists, we take it from here and we continue to engage on the print, on the online platforms, and push the ideas that we have shared here forward. So I really do thank you for your time. And I thank our audience that have been with us since the start. And I really do hope that this has been worthwhile for you in terms of the time that you have spent with us here this morning. And finally, I want to say a word of thank you to our sponsors, that's a TGI and AFEX, for partnering with Business Day to do this conference today. Let this conversation continue because one thing that is very clear in Nigeria, especially this year, anyone that has, you don't have to go to the market to actually know that all is not well with food prices. And of course, it's not because Nigerians are eating more, it's just because the cost of production, the risk of production, whatever it is that is driving up the cost of food prices, and of course, the feeding from the exchange rate. I really do hope that all these challenges, by the time we meet again soon, we'll probably have made some progress on them. On that note, I want to say that you enjoy a good Business Day afternoon, and I hope to see you again at one of our other conferences. I thank you all, and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Delight was actually started to tell innovative, exciting, and positive food stories out of Lagos, Nigeria.
Being the foremost luxurious goods company in the entire West Africa is a big deal.
Will you have every opportunity? No. But you see, the opportunities you lose on account of your value system, that's your opportunity cost for what you believe, and is the price you must be willing to pay.